Hi guys, it's Katina with Atomica Nuclei Tin Jewelry, and I know it's been a while since I've posted a video, but today I thought I would share with you how I make my own ear wires. Now, making ear wires is something that I chose to do in my line of jewelry. I always found that I had a lot of people who said they were allergic to different types of metals. And I have a lot of people who are looking to purchase gifts for other people, and they're not quite for sure if they're allergic to different kinds of metals. So to remedy that, I make my own ear wires, and I make them out of niobium, which is very hypoallergenic. So it's just something that I found that works for me in my line, and it keeps my customers happy. If you use store-bought wires, that's great. If you make your ear wires out of something else, that's great too. I'm just showing you what I use in my line. And if it inspires anybody, that's awesome. Okay, so I order my wire from Rio Grande. I order it in 10-foot coils. I will order 2 or 3 coils at a time. I think you might get a price break, not for sure about that, but it's just something that's easy for me. So I use a 20 gauge wire. And so when I get the coils, I will go ahead and cut them into the lengths that I need. I'm pretty uniform when I'm making my ear wires. They all look a lot alike, just because that's just my style. If you want to play with different designs on ear wires, you know, that's certainly something that you can do. But what I found for me is that when I get my 10-foot coil, I will cut them down into lengths of 1 3/4 inches, okay? And again, if you're gonna make a different type of ear wire, you'll want a different length, but when I cut them at 1 3/4, it seems like I get around 30 pair of ear wires per 10-foot coil, okay? So when I get them, I will just sit and, like I said, cut them down so they're all uniform in size. I store them in this really handy soap container. So when I'm ready to make a pair of ear wires, I'm ready to go. So the tools I use a 1.5 millimeter looper, okay? Now I have used the bigger loopers. I think it's a 2 or 2.5. So I like this loop size best, but you can play around with different loopers and figure out what size that you like best. I use a pair of bail making pliers. And these have different sizes that I wrap the wire around to form the ear wire. And again, I use the same one all the time, this one right here. But again, you can, you know, change it up and use a different size. That's up to you. You'll need a burr cup, and this one is a burr cup will sand the very end of the wire down so it's smooth. If you don't have a burr cup, you can certainly use a nail file, or I always have 400 grit sandpaper on my table, so you could use that too. Just something to make the end of the wire smooth for when it goes in the ear. It's not jagged, okay? And the most important thing I find in my jewelry making as a whole is a great pair of flush cutters. I think that any amount of money that you pay on flush cutters, that the better the brand, the better the tool. Swanstrom is a great brand. They cut wire very flush. And that's what you want, is to cut something very smoothly so there's less cleanup when you're making your jewelry. So I highly recommend these. These other 3 tools right here, you can find these at any, you know, box craft store, Joann's, Michael's, Hobby Lobby. They all have these items here. I order the Swanstrom tools from Rio Grande, and I do recommend those. Okay, so we're ready to make a pair of ear wires. So I'm going to pick up 2 lengths of wire, just like this. Okay. Now, what I'm going to show you does not work for all types of wire, but for niobium it works. You can cut 2 lengths at the same time. I also use stainless steel and copper wire in my jewelry. Stainless steel, you cannot cut 2 lengths of wire at the same time. On some gauges of copper, you can. okay? But niobium works well. So to make a uniform pair of earrings that match, I go ahead and just slip them in my looper. And as you see, I don't use the circle. I think that's a waste of wire. I just put it in there enough to where it's gonna nip that wire. And there it goes, okay? And then sometimes you might want to straighten it just a little bit because that wire, you know, it's in a coil. It does hold a little bit of shape at first. But niobium, like I said, is very easy to work with, so you can pull it into a shape that you would like better. So you'll want to clip off the end. And if you do this while you still have the wire in the loopers, you can make sure that they're the same length. Just clip those off like that. And then take your bell making pliers and choose the size you want. I always use this size. And you can see that the loop here is going like this. It's folding in, and I want that to be on the inside of my ear wire. So I'm going to put it like this and shimmy that out, and you can straighten those up just a little bit. And then you're gonna bend your ear wire around it, okay? Now, if you hold it just right, they're still the same size. Just make that little curve like that, okay? And then you take your burr cup and you make your ends smooth. Okay, and then you have a matching pair of ear wires, okay? Now, you can give them a little bit of shape, because see, that niobium is really easy to work with. So you can pull that loop back in and give them a shape to they're really straight. And if you want to, you can even pull this loop where it is sideways. Sometimes people like to use those sideways, those sideways where the loop is like this, you know, like that. I don't know. Anyway, you can do that with the niobium. It lends itself well to that. I don't use that style very often, but it's there. You can also take, and while the wire is still straight, you can put a bead on there and then wrap it around your bell making pliers to make the curve. So that lends itself really pretty on earring styles. So that's how I make my ear wires. That's what works for me. If you've never made ear wires, I hope that you see this and you think, oh, that's really easy. I'm going to try that. If you already make your own ear wires, that's great. That's great. I'm not here to say you're doing anything wrong. You're doing it great. And I just want to thank you guys for joining me today, and I hope you have a very fabulous week.